The October 24, 2017 meeting of the Methacton School Board District Board of School Directors is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Chris Sander, and I'm happy to be here to talk about the great things happening at Arrowhead Elementary School. Our theme this year is team. All the teachers, staff, janitors, bus drivers, and Principal Roberts show the students how to work together to make everyone achieve more. We are very fortunate to also have watchdog dads because they are good examples for kids and make a good environment. This has been a special year at Arrowhead because we welcomed a lot of new students and teachers from Audubon and Eagleville who have made our school an even better team. I have had great teachers who have always done their best for all the students in their classes, starting with Mrs. Fisher in kindergarten, Mrs. Fontanelle in first grade, Mrs. Morgan in second grade, Mrs. Graffelder in third grade, and now Mrs. Keys in fourth grade. They have all worked hard to make the students achieve more. Our home and school just completed the Arrowhead Challenge last Friday, where we raised more than $13,000 for teacher supplies, field trips, class parties, riff books, and more. One of my favorite things is how generous Arrowhead is to our community. We just finished a food drive and are getting ready to collect and donate Halloween candy for soldiers. We will also have a first responders lunch, a Veterans Day celebration, and do Toys for Tots. Thank you to the board for listening to me and supporting Arrowhead Elementary.
It's on. All right, first off, I want to apologize because due to technical difficulties beyond my control, I don't have your certificates with me tonight, but you'll have them tomorrow. So raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to uphold all the laws and rules and regulations of the school board as a junior school board member? Congratulations.
Mr. Roberts, if you could remain standing while we're just processing ahead here just a little bit. I just want to make sure that the board and the public know about the Award of Excellence. For the third year in a row, each month I have recognized professional and support staff members in our buildings. The Methacton Award of Excellence represents a gesture of appreciation and commendation for our dedicated employees, a point of Methacton pride. This year, following the surprise presentation of their certificates, we have invited these employees to join us here at the school board meeting so that the board may recognize and congratulate them on their commitment to our students. This month, we recognize Arrowhead Elementary School as the students that just presented here before you, and we recognize Ms. Mary Beth Moyer and Ms. Sandy Portzer, and I'd like Mr. Roberts to say a few words about both of them.
Sure, thank you, Dr. Zerby. I have a couple of remarks here. First off, we'll start with Mrs. Moyer. Mrs. Moyer is the epitome of a natural teacher. On a daily basis, she challenges her students to think, collaborate, and have fun. She also incorporates a wide variety of instructional strategies to engage students in learning. Her use of the technology in the classroom is outstanding. In addition, she provides students with a warm, caring, and nurturing environment. Mrs. Moyer is the essence of a true team player, and I feel that we are very, very fortunate to have her amongst the Arrowhead faculty. So, Mrs. Moyer, would you kindly please come on down? I feel like Bob Barker right now. All right. And up next is Mrs. Sandy Portzer. Mrs. Portzer is a strong student advocate. The daily support and care she provides Arrowhead students and faculty is a true inspiration. Sandy is always willing to lend a helping hand to anyone who needs assistance. She is conscientious, reliable, flexible, kind, and friendly. Our students love Mrs. Portzer. When you think of our district and school theme as team, together everyone achieves more, you think of Sandy Portzer. So Sandy, thank you so much for everything you do to support Arrowhead and our students. Can you please come on down? And lastly, they both don't like this, but we're going to recognize them anyway. So thank you so much.
I'm glad you did.
Board members.
An announcement and executive session report. The public's hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purpose of rebroadcasting, and there are no executive sessions to report on. By way of attendance, we have everybody but Ms. Reese, who is going to join us as soon as possible. In terms of recognition of guests and scheduled speakers, I'll turn it over to Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Mr. President. This evening we have a few presentations. We have the Academic Achievement Recognition M Awards presented by Arcola Principal, Ms. Mangano. We also have the Methacton Coordinating Council presentation, the beginning of the presentations for the school year, and we welcome the Coordinating Council, which helps our home and school organizations. So to start the evening off, Academic Achievement Awards, Ms. Mangano. And if the President and other board members can help us with the recognition of the M Awards, appreciate it.
Any of the board members who want to come up and hand out some of the awards, you're more than welcome to.
Which ones are we doing first? I'm going to do 8 first. You want to do 8 first? Yeah. Do the old entrance first. This is 7. So I'm going to do 8 first.
Oh, okay. So, this one. You want to do these first?
Mm-hmm.
Easier for now.
Thank you. And good evening to our school board and everyone in the audience, and welcome to Arcola. It's a pleasure to have the meeting here this evening in our own home court here, which is great. I just want to make a few comments before the students come up and receive their awards tonight. There's a few times as a building principal, there's many times that you have the pleasure of doing things like this, where you get to acknowledge students that have been in your building and are off to the high school, and students that are still in the building and are moving through. So these are proud moments, kind of like parent moments, if you will. So I'm very happy to be here in front of everyone this evening. Before I also begin to read 2 long lists of names, so please bear with me. These students have achieved the M Award, which, as a reminder, is a 93% or above average of all 4 marking periods for the year. It's a pretty high honor, in addition to everything else they're doing, being busy 7th and 8th grade students at the time. So it's a pretty big achievement at best. So again, proud to be here to acknowledge them all. Now, I also want to say I practiced hard the names, but I am sure I will make a mistake. But I will model how good it is when you make a mistake and you just keep moving. So bear with me. If I do something wrong, feel free to correct me. Okay, I'm going to begin with last year's 8th grade M Award recipients. If you could please come forward and hold your applause to the end, that would be great. Sean Augustin, Hannah Alex, Christopher Alley, Isha Amin, Richard Armstrong, Dahlia Boone, Charles Bordonaro, Aiden Byrne, Kelly Capobianco, Alec Chang, Jaehee Chang, Claire Chen. Sorry, I'm going too fast. Daniel Chimes, Sung Cho, John Christian, Nicholas Clark, Russell Coffin, Catherine Connolly, Paige Deal, Sarah Didia, Joshua Doe, Daniel Doran, Madison Eastmure, Hannah Evans, Brooke Finisi, Ava Fagalia, Lillian Friedman, Matthew Fu, Jeffrey Gong, Jacob Gorzaika, Alec Grobaker, Emerson Griga, Joseph Gillian, Justin Giamini, Emily Hall, Isabella Heiser, Kenny Hermes, Rachel Hogan, Elena Hoppel, Yipping Hu, Gabrielle Jacoby, Catherine Jaworski, Grace Kang, good job. Maya Canvar, Lily Kiefer, Lena Kimball, Alexa Kratz, Maya Lieber, Angela Lee, Edwin Lee, Iris Lee, Patrick Lee, Jessica Lenine, Juliet Lauer, Allison Markley, Ella McCluskey, Haley McGarity, Dominic Mioli, Rachel Murray, Genevieve Nieder, Olivia Knights, Ty Nugent, Kevin O'Connor, Shannon O'Neill, Thomas Picaro, Sudiksha Panda, Leah Payon, Hannah Peters, Tammy Pham, Lauren Raley, Sadia Rowe, Allison Reed, Lindsay Reed, Sarah Roth, Christopher Rowland, Jaquilo Ruitt, Kara Radusky, Jenna Salkowski, Christina Sang, Sharon Shee, Quinn Shields, Emma Spinelli, Christopher Spletzer, Ryan Stanton, Rory Stein, Zachary Stevenson, Olivia Terry, Riley Thomas, Kevin Trafford, Kylie Trankel, Bridget Troutman, Olivia Van Horn, Daniel Vo, Carice Walker, Michael Wang, Bethany Sue, and Sarah Young. Man, that's a long list. Nice job. Woo! Nice job. You're very welcome. And just for the record, 8th grade, we miss you a lot. We do. Thank you. Well done. Okay, one more list to go. Hang in there. We have last year's 7th grade, current 8th grade M Award recipients. Please bear with me. I promise I will try to be slower. Irene Bijou, Caitlin Cassidy, Bonnie Chapman, Nathan Choi, Caitlin Clark, Mackenzie Clark. Oh, there they are. Giovanna Consiglio, Nathan Courtney. Yay. Julia Cummings, Matthew DeSorna, Olivia Davidson, Giancarlo D. Philippus, Amber DeMichelle, Maggie Dowell, Catherine Drummond, Aditi Dukel, Melinda Eglinton, Jalen Ford, Hannah Fultz, Bridget Gable, Thomas Gibbs. Ashley Nasarkerson. Oh, I did mess that one up. You'll have to tell me tomorrow. She'll get me tomorrow. It's okay. Iris Gong. Rachel Gordon. Addison Gormley. Haley Graw. Alyssa Griffin. Joanna Gugliano. Matthew Haas, Graham Halfpenny, Kira Halfpenny. Jordan Henry. Mara Herbison. Julia Horowitz. There's Julia. Catherine Hull. Josephine James. Saranya Jenna. Melinda Jin. Joseph Kamenetz. Yureen Kang. Michaela Kasparkova. Madeline Kenny. Sarah Kenwood. Joseph Kiernan. John Kim. Sarah Kim. Tyler Kim. Adeline Kleckner. Dylan Kang. Karina Kumar. McKenna Comfort. Sarah Laurie. Sophia Lieber. Junie Lee. Sarah Legnola. Eric Lewenson. Angela Leanne. Michael Lee. Celia Long. Emma Long. James Marrow. Allison Mascantonio. Ryan Mature. Nolan McCluskey. Colin Meyer. Chaitanya Mittal. Grace Montoya. Ruby Murray. Parry Nav. Madison No. Kirsten O'Brien. Ryan O'Donnell. William Orcutt. Teresa Otto.
Pause and take a picture.
Oh. We have a few more names left. We're taking one picture.
Is it just a couple? No. Okay.
Still on pace.
Okay. Good job. See, look how good.
A round of applause for this group.
You guys can go. You want them to sit? You guys can sit down. We ran out of space.
Nice job. We just need some space. Prina Padmanabhan. Natalia Parientes. And here they come. Yay. Trisha Patel. Connor Petrie. Devin Petrie. Dylan Fan. Grace Picosi. Balya Plower. Ben Reich. Maria Rosinski. James Seaman. Madeline Schaefer. Michaela Sheedy. Sarah Schufler. Reagan Skudlarek. Delaney Smith. Melanie Smith. Elena Snodgrass. Holly Spletzer. Ian Stahl. Sophia Starinari. Cameron Steele. Quinton Stemler. Matthew Tang. Hannah Taylor. Abigail Thornton. Nicole Timko. Everett Weaver. Lily Welsh. Michael Wimmer. Colin Ye. Amy Zhang. Austin Zhang. Congratulations.
Good job.
Excellent work, Ms. Mangano. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda, we have the Methacton Coordinating Council. Members of the Coordinating Council, we'll just give people just a few minutes to find their seats or mosey out.
There we go.
I'm going to recommend that members of the board take the seats in the front row so that we can see the screen behind us and the presentation that's been prepared. Thank you.
You okay? You okay for me to start? Hi, I'm Ashley Wilkerson. I'm the president of the Methacton Coordinating Council this year, and I was asked to come just to give a brief overview of what we've done in terms of communication for our home and school organizations this year. The process actually started last year as we started looking at how we could better communicate with our families. And so we had a meeting at the end of last year that Angela Lynch was kind enough to come and help us with, where we reviewed all of our communication systems at each of our home and schools. And you can see that we had a variety of different communication systems in place. Some of them were systems that cost money, some of them were free, but it was obviously quite different from school to school and made it a little bit challenging for parents who had kids at multiple schools in our district. Some of the concerns that we discussed were having parents subscribe to multiple systems. It can be confusing enough when you have one child entering the district. It is several times more confusing when you have a child at the elementary school level, Skyview, Arcola, and the high school, trying to figure out how you find out what's going on in your school. There were also concerns about how we transfer parents from one system to another as their children change schools, because often parents aren't even sure where to look for that information. So we reviewed all of the systems and decided that we would be best served by moving to a system called Constella. The reasons we decided to go with it, it's free. It's both a website and an app. The web has a little bit more capability for the administrative side. The app is great for notifying parents, whether it's events, messages from other parents, calendar events, anything like that. It can also send out emails based on the class, the grade, or the school that a child attends. And I'll show some screenshots in a minute, but the website has a calendar view that's very user-friendly. It can be set to send out automatic reminders. There are ways for parents to communicate with one another directly just through a directory function. And for our parents who don't speak English as a first language, it can be set to translate into pretty much any language that we have in the district. When you log into the desktop view, this is a screenshot of what I see when I log in. Has each school where you have a child listed. So again, doesn't matter how many kids you have in the district, you can get all your information in one site. The initial view shows any messages that come up. So I have this set for Arcola right now, and it has all of the messages that have been sent at this point to the Arcola parents, so I can't lose them. I can't delete them. They're in the system. Down at the bottom here, there's a link that takes you to Amazon. That's nice because any of the parents who use this link and then purchase from Amazon, 1% of those donations automatically go to our home and school organizations. And if I flip to the calendar view, it has an interactive calendar, so you can see this is for Arrowhead now, any of the events that have already taken place, upcoming events, and if I click on those, it'll tell me what time they're taking place. If there are any documents, like forms that I need to send in for one of my children to participate, I can pull that up there as well. It also has a nice sync to my calendar function, so that when you go to that, you can choose to sync literally every event that's going on in every school to your calendar. Can't forget, can't lose it. Also any events that you sign up for. Sign-ups are done in a variety of ways, but typically there's an email that's sent out. This is a screenshot from one that we sent out last year for a party at Audubon. And so any of our parties can be organized literally by sending an email out. Parents click on the email and can sign up. So that's it in a nutshell. We've had generally positive feedback with all the schools switching this year. The parents like having everything in one place. It's easy for everyone to communicate. You can literally just shoot off a message into a committee, into a classroom, whatever group you have your child into in the app itself. And so at this point, we're just working on frequency of communication, making sure that we're not over or under communicating, but overall we've had positive reviews. Questions or anything?
If there are questions from the board, we can take them after we come back to the seats. So if you don't mind just
Absolutely.
waiting for just a minute till we return to our seats.
Should I give this back to you?
Are there any questions from members of the board on the Constella or any of the information that Ms. Wilkerson had presented here this evening?
Not so much for Ashley. It's just when you get involved with any type app for a school, and it was just on national news for as hacking into school districts, and they had a couple different states. But here's an app that it might be free to us if Amazon's supporting it, but as far as what data they're taking, as far as location data, keystrokes, like just getting to know who's using it. And that's something that I think the district, I don't have a problem using it, but I think we should know at least what data they're taking from our district. That's just my concern.
Maybe if I could just answer that a little bit. As you recall, the coordinating council works as a separate entity, unlike the school district, and as a group supporting the needs of our students in Methacton. So what they've decided to do was to use this program to coordinate the communications among home and school members. While our building principals work with the presidents of each of the home and schools, and while the administration works with the coordinating council, we don't provide any information to the home and school or the coordinating council other than what we would normally provide in terms of the events, the times, locations, things of that nature.
Right.
But other than that, pretty much, it's my understanding, Ms. Wilkerson, that it's a system run by the members.
That's correct. We're a separate nonprofit organization, and so when we sign parents up through this, the only information that's in the system is what parents enter, and they can choose to put in as much or as little as they want. There are some parents who don't include their children's names at all. There's some parents who include their children's names but don't necessarily put any of their contact information. You can do that even without an email and just receive messages within Constella itself, so parents can tailor it to what their comfort level is.
And it's fine. My concern, though, is it should be looked into to see what data is being sold, what's being collected, and that way the parents can have that information, and if they find that it's a little intrusive, that they can make decisions on how much information they
Right.
put on there or take off.
I believe
That's all. I mean,
Right.
there's money in data.
Right. I believe that information is there when parents sign up, but it's been a few years since I've been in the system, so I can't say I remember offhand, but I'll look for that and shoot you an email when I find it.
I've yet to get to the end of the user's agreement on any of these programs, so.
Dr. Wilkerson, I just wanted to thank you and the rest of the coordinating council for everything that you do, and thank you for the reminder because I need to work on my Constella a little bit. So I will get on that this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. We appreciate all the work that you've done on this. And if we could, I think that generally speaking, we would go into the reports, then we'd go into the agenda. I know that there are some items on the agenda specifically to bond financing that I believe PFM may need to make any statements related to the agenda items. And we will do that prior, so we can do that prior to actually public comments on agenda items. I think that's appropriate.
Well, good evening. You have a document like this with a yellow cover page, but I'll just summarize it. There are two resolutions that were before you this evening, if you'd like to proceed. The first is to refund the 2011 bonds. It's what we call high to low refunding. It produces interest rate savings and therefore lower payments. There's a little over $100,000 of debt service savings that would occur in the current budget year and some in the next budget year. So in the front 2 years, be a little bit over $100,000. Then all the payments are more or less the same, and it ends at the same point in time, so we're not extending the debt. The second resolution, we've been working with the Finance Committee and a couple presentations to the board about borrowing some new money. It's for $8.5 million. The resolution is for a larger amount, and then depending on exactly how the interest rates come in, we will downsize it appropriately so that there would be $8.5 million of bonds issued. You'd pay the financing costs and receive the balance then for your construction projects. The money's in place in your debt service. We did go through the credit rating process, and we got the rating confirmed today, so your Moody's AA2, which is a very good credit rating. That's for both series of bonds. The paperwork's in order, and if you approve this evening, we would price the bonds at least 15 days apart in order to keep them both bank qualified, and we would have both the transactions settled before the end of the calendar year. So that's a quick summary.
Are there any questions from members of the board on this matter prior to us moving on to the remainder of the agenda? If not, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we'll move on to the reports. First one up is the Finance Committee, Mr. Ryan.
Yep. Actually, it'll be Paul this month. I just want to say thank you to Paul and Tim. I was at the hospital with my mother the night of the meeting, and I know Dr. Zerby was out sick, so thank you both for keeping it moving quickly and getting the minutes in. So thank you both.
Thanks, Mike. So the finance meeting was held on the 11th of October, starting at 6:30. Mr. Dorn, Ms. Hackett, myself, Mr. Bricker were in attendance, and Mr. Ryan and Mr. Zerby were absent. We went through a list of bills. Dr. Bricker, congratulations. Mr. Bricker answered a series of questions related to Power School, First Student, transportation, library, et cetera. It's in some of the details are there. Then we went through the Treasury report related and discussion around the taxes held in escrow. There was a question regarding new protests. Mr. Bricker confirmed that there is a new protest for this tax year, besides the ongoing Shenandoah. No questions around budgetary transfers. Revenue is more or less in line over the last couple of years, slightly behind. Not really an item of concern at this particular point in time. The healthcare report was unavailable. It had not been released by the consortium. We had a series of discussion topics. The first one on the agenda for tonight also is the LERTA program. So Carmen Natalia from Mark Consulting and Donald Delamadar from Lower Providence Township discussed the program, the pros and cons, specifically around a property at 950 Rittenhouse Road. The township is seeking the district support to revitalize distressed properties. Each property is independently determined and requires public hearings. The committee discussed the pros and cons, and the conclusion was to recommend its approval tonight. The state budget had really no progress at that particular point in time, and there's really no concern at this particular point in time on the cash flow for the district in October, but once the new year comes around, we may need to revisit. The audit is slightly delayed related to a compliance supplement. Mr. Bricker expressed his frustration with the auditors and getting responsiveness from our auditors related to the delay. We just got an updated related to financing the master plan, and also that was the main one, which covered the two elements that were just mentioned. We have the technology lease reimbursement resolution that will be presented. There was a banking RFI that Mr. Bricker was getting the last remaining information around rates and services. There's a discussion around Keystone Realtor Advisors. The committee discussed the extension of our relationship. A reduction in pricing was declined by Keystone, as they have the same contract for all school districts. Keystone had provided a recommendation regarding the use of attorney support on evaluating if an appeal should be pursued. The recommendation is a continued relationship with Keystone, although there was not complete agreement among the committee members. A request was made to reach out to Lower Province concerning the continuation of Keystone and its potential impact on the LERTA program. We had discussion on the budgetary direction as scheduled in the budgetary process, discussion around zero-based budgeting model and the Act 1 exception or exceptions impact. The recommendation of the committee is no more than Act 1. Act 1 index for 18-19 is 2.4%. Mr. Bricker was asked to estimate the impact on any exceptions if they were available, so the entire board can associate a dollar amount with that option. We ended up with courtesy floor. Mr. Andrews commented on budgetary direction, Keystone Realty, and use of reserves of capital instead of the full borrowing. Mr. Bickelman also commented on the negotiated versus competitive bidding bond issues, understanding interest rates, the review of the bond council, and having monthly reports showing the details of taxes paid in protest. The meeting adjourned at 8:46. That's the end of my report.
All right, thank you. Now on to the Property Committee, Mr. Dorn.
Thank you. The Property Committee met on October 9th. The meeting was called to order at 6:30. All committee members were present with the exception of Dr. Zerbe, who was out sick. Discussion topics for the night included the master plan. Mr. Miller from Fidavia presented an update to the committee. We discussed the draft engineering report that was received from Consolidated Engineering with a focus on Arcola Skyview Auditorium, the high school mechanical and electrical systems, and what options we may be considering for the long term, with a focus on the cost, total cost to operate, not only the cost for the equipment, and an Arcola code review for ingress and egress. We also were presented the RFP results for the architectural and engineering services. Work will be proposed to allow for proper sequencing and phasing to allow execution over a 2 to 3 year period. So these projects we talked about won't all wrap up in a single calendar year, but the plan is to sequence the projects correctly so that once we get into an area for a certain phase, that we don't have to come back in and disrupt it with something else. The second item was stormwater management project. This is really a continuation of the field project, and it was what we've been calling Phase 2 work. That work is completed. It primarily dealt with plantings for this fall. As many of you know, you typically plant trees in the fall. So this really completed our work as was required by Worcester Township. There was a lighting test scheduled for October 12th. We may be required to add additional trees, but no additional funds will be required. And I think we got an update this week that basically we passed the township test. That was not done at the time of this meeting. And then we discussed building projects, building level projects for 2018-19. These are projects that come to the facilities team and to the superintendent from the building level principals, and it's kind of their list of projects that they think need to be done at their schools. So Mr. Fretz has started that process, and there will be an effort to make sure that the building level projects are coordinated with the master plan projects to assure that, you know, we're not repeating or duplicating work efforts across the board. These building level projects will be reviewed by Mr. Fretz and Dr. Zerbe and then presented to the property committee before coming to the full board. Courtesy of the floor, Mr. Andrews inquired about some of the documents that we're presenting. They're fairly onerous and, you know, they're kind of small print. Not done on purpose, just so that we can get a lot of stuff on one page, and he inquired about increasing the font size. He also inquired about sprinklers in the auditorium at Arcola. Wanted to make sure we had a complete scope in a given area of work so that we weren't going in and disrupting that work as we completed it. Mr. Earnshaw requested we track the estimates and costs back to the original documents that were a part of the AEM master plan document that the board adopted last year. The meeting was adjourned at 7:57 p.m.
Thank you. And now on to the Education Committee, Ms. Rees.
We met on October 2nd at 6:30. Everyone in the committee was in attendance, in addition to Dr. Sosnovic and Dr. Sargini. First up was Dr. Sargini going over undersubscribed courses. He did this a little differently than has been done in the past, explaining there's extensive analysis that goes into undersubscribed courses that include many factors. There was also a discussion, and it is his hope to complete the master schedule in the spring versus over the summer, because then all the moving parts and the people that are involved could be there for the discussion. Next up was the ACT, or the ACT, SAT, and AP 2017 results. Bear with me because they're impressive, so I would like to read them fully. Analysis of all of these results were discussed. Some of the highlights included 894 total AP tests taken. 91.5% scored 3 or higher, with 71% earning a 4 or a 5. The PA average is in the high 60th percentile. There were big jumps in AP scholars from 2016 to 2017 and in the AP program in general. From 2013 to 2017, the numbers went from 804 total seats taken by AP students to 1,123. It went from 595 exams taken to 894. The number of students went from 370 to 460. Currently, there are 21 students enrolled in the new AP Computer Science class, 29 in the new AP Capstone. For the ACT exam, 159 students took the exam with and when you take that exam, 24 and above is considered excellent. All of our students earned 26 and above. For the SAT, at 321 students took the exam. The national average in reading is 538, Pennsylvania average 540, and Methacton is 600. The national average in math is 537, PA 537 as well, and Methacton 615, for a total average of 1,215. Next up was Act 339 planning. For those of you unaware of what that means, that's the school counseling program. The MCIU is running a training sessions to help districts at no cost due to the fact that this is mandated. The dates for those trainings are September 27th, October 20th, December 12th, March 2nd, April 5th, and a September and October date in 2018. The final wrap-up is March 2019. It's a 2-year process that will end with a plan for the school board to approve. Mrs. Mangano, Dr. Katona, Dr. Angstead, and 6 counselors attended. The focus is all college and career readiness regarding 4 domains: core academic skills, cross-cutting capabilities, behavioral skills, and navigation skills. There are 4 strands emphasizing awareness and planning: career acquisition, career retention, and entrepreneurship. And this is an area where Methacton does need to increase. There will be an advisory council consisting of student, staff, community, and post-secondary. Judy Schmitz, the K-12 counselor, will be the main contact for all the efforts. So thank you to all those involved in this. It's a big and important process for Methacton. Next was information about Parents' Night for Math and Literacy. There is a night planned on November 14th for K-2 students, and on November 15th for 3 to 5, a chance for families in general to learn more about Math in Focus and Wonders. In addition, there was an EL Parent Night, and it was held on October 11th at Woodland from 6:30 to 8:30, including babysitting. Many resources are available to these families to help with everything from technology to curriculum to community. People that attend are the school nurse, the community library, ARA, Boys and Girl Scouts, etc. So thank you to all those involved. We had a very busy night, so bear with me. Next on the agenda was the Student Assistance Program update. At some point, this Student Assistant Program was not called that across all the buildings, so now that will be the name so it can be recognized at all levels. And again, training was offered at the MCIU for 3 full days, and that consisted of principals, counselors, teachers, and K-12 offerings. And what it does speaks for itself. It's a way for us to assist our students in need. Hopefully this is the last time we have because I can't say it, immunization clinics on the agenda. As you know, the district had to really do a lot of work due to the new state mandates. As of September 12th, which was the deadline, only 2 students still needed required vaccinations. So kudos to the staff involved, the nursing staff involved with that. There is a final clinic that was offered on October 15th for rechecks. In addition, the district offers flu shots to its staff and students, and the last student flu shot is October 26th for all students from 3 to 8 who are accompanied with their parents. Next was adjusted professional development plans. Due to the work stoppage, professional development must be accomplished differently than anticipated. Administration is identifying must-dos. Creative solutions such as using substitutes, a trainer coming in to model lessons for math and focus, faculty meetings, small group sessions, utilizing time when assemblies are in progress, principals providing feedback, etc. This will be an ongoing effort. Second to last was a brief Power School update. There was a discussion about the issues with transition. The biggest issues seemed to be with attendance and transcripts. Report cards at that time were almost ready. I'm sure by now that they are. And the ISSs are also receiving more training to help the staff. As always, we went over the enrollment report. Some grades are lower, some grades are higher. In short, 38 more kindergarten students enrolled than predicted. M&M, or Malone and McBroom, had predicted 4,767 students. Methacton currently sits at 26 students greater than that mid-level projection. We had courtesy of the floor. Dr. Hahn broached eliminating rank again, adding we are a minority in Montgomery County still using rank. Due to administration and other changes at the high school, Methacton is not changing this for the school year. Megan Fitzgerald mentioned a wonderful fourth grade trip her Audubon student had taken to the North Montgo Technical Career Center, and I believe since that meeting there is a trip planned for all fourth grade, not just Audubon. And we adjourned at 8:35. Thank you.
That was quite a meeting.
I know.
And now on to Policy Committee, Ms. Aubrey Larson-East.
Well, I'm going to offset that one. The Policy Committee met on October 4th, and it was an uncharacteristically uneventful meeting. It was productive. We got 10 policies moved to a first read tonight. And really, it was more tying up loose ends than anything else. We had some policies that had been in development in the committee for quite some time that we were finally able to button up and move along. Most notably, Policy 141 for school-related organizations that gives us some better guidelines for how those organizations function within our district. Policies regarding safety and building security that we had been developing for some time to make sure that our policies and practices are in line. And I think one of the more interesting ones was the policy on service animals in schools, now that this is something that we're seeing happening in our district, and we now have a good policy in place to support that. Another interesting thing that came about that night is that we have our first policy up for repeal. It's a policy that's no longer relevant regarding transportation employment, and at the advice of our solicitor, we are moving that to a first read to repeal this evening. We did not have anyone in attendance besides the full committee. We had Dr. Zerbe, Dr. Sosnovic, and Mr. Summers, and so there was no one for courtesy of the floor, and the meeting adjourned at 8:19.
All right, thank you. Now on to the IU, Ms. Sackett.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. Our IU meeting was on September the 27th. We did approve a resolution authorizing refunding of a 2012 bond series for savings. So I think we've heard that here locally, so we're also doing it at the IU. We also approved canceling the October 2017 IU board meeting. We typically have difficulty getting enough attendance to have a quorum at that meeting, so they decided we could cancel that, and we authorized the administration to take the necessary steps to pay bills and salaries during that time period. We had probably 50 or so contracts and services agreements that we approved, including one between the IU and the Methacton School District to provide data collection and progress monitoring for diagnostic and prescriptive reading instruction. I read it slowly. Several of the officers of the IU were not there at the meeting, including Dr. George, Dr. Gaffney, and Ms. Valletto. They were attending a Call to Action Federal Advocacy Conference in Washington, D.C. So we didn't have our typical update on what's happening in Harrisburg and Washington. Also of note, Ms. Kennedy, the Director of Office of Technology Services, and her assistant, Mr. Wiedemeyer, are actually providing technology support for the Pottstown School District. She has become the acting technology director at Pottstown because they are without a technology director. It's one of the things that the IU does from time to time. And for the next meeting, which will be November 15th, it's being moved to the old office of the IU, which is on Main Street, where we currently have the Early Learning Academy with pre-K counts and the Head Start programs. So we will be meeting in the old place. I understand there have been improvements made to the facility, so it'll be interesting to see it. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. And now on to the Technical Career Center. Who's going to do that tonight?
Yeah, the JOC had a meeting on October 10th at 7 p.m. Very, very short meeting, just a few things. One of the key things that was pointed out is the Methacton Foundation was invited to the Tech Center for a tour. And a brief overview concept of what it is, what the school does. Apparently, it was very enlightening to the group because they had never been there before to see what it actually does. Enrollment at the Tech Center is leveled. They're up about 4 students this year with a total enrollment of 1,030 students. They are seeing certain decreases in areas of instruction, construction, carpentry, and commercial arts are 2 of them, and they're going to watch them as well. So again, this has been, construction carpentry is a critical one, right? Without those guys, we can't build the houses. So it's one of the things that they are looking at. And they're also getting ready for their 50-year celebration. So that's the end of my report.
Some technical difficulties there in the front row. All right, thank you. Now on to the student board representatives.
So just a few things going on around the school. In sports, the fall season is almost over. For some sports, they have made it to districts, one of them being field hockey. They went undefeated this season. They won the PAC, and they have many more games to come, hopefully. And winter sports seasons also starting soon, some of these including swim, basketball, indoor track and field, and wrestling. The PSATs were taken in the beginning of October, and there are SATs to come in November and December. Students can register for these tests through the College Board, and they are completely optional. And finally, the play, A Midsummer's Night Dream, will be held November 9th at 4 o'clock and November 10th and 11th at 7. Thank you.
The high school's Minithon will be having a Harlem Wizards game on Monday, November 6th from 7 to 9 p.m. All proceeds to this go to raise money for pediatric cancer. Also, the high school participated in a One Book, One School over the summer where all 9th through 12th grade students read Life as We Knew It. Today, the author, Susan Beth Pfeffer, came to the high school and students had the opportunity to sign up to attend an assembly to speak to her and ask her questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, excuse me, on to the communications report. Ms. Lynch.
I just want to take a moment to thank Ms. Wilkerson, too, for the work that the MCC did to consolidate their communications tools. That was a part of the district strategic plan, and I appreciate them helping me accomplish that goal. In a few weeks, we will again welcome area seniors to Arcola Intermediate School for the annual Senior Citizens Thanksgiving Dinner. This program, run through our community education program, is a key intergenerational activity that is organized by the Arcola National Junior Honor Society and their advisor, Mrs. Joan Craver. Just under 100 area seniors will enjoy a Thanksgiving luncheon served by our Junior Honor Society students under the supervision of Aramark employees. Select chorus, string ensemble, and orchestra performances take place before and during the meal, and a brief planetarium show follows. It is through programs like this that we invite some of the many Methacton residents who either do not or no longer have children in our schools to visit our buildings, interact with our fine faculty and staff, and appreciate the excellent, well-rounded educational experience that our students receive in the district that they so generously support. Thank you.
Ms. Lynch, can you also mention the Simons Fund, please?
Mention the Simons Fund this past weekend. This coming weekend, the students will be... we had a number of students, I think we have a little over 200 students that are signed up to receive cardiac testing. One of the leading causes of death among student athletes is sudden cardiac arrest. And through the generous support of Simons Fund, they will come and work alongside our nurses and a number of volunteers through the supervision of Simons Fund to administer cardiac tests to students under their parents' care. And they'll receive those reports. These tests are not commonly given by pediatricians, so it's very kind of Simons Fund. It's a mission of that organization because I believe the president of Simons Fund, the founder, his own son passed away as a result of sudden cardiac arrest. And I believe Amy Smith also was central to bringing that to the district, so I thank her for her leadership as well.
Yeah, I just want to follow up and thank the administrators that were involved, the staff that was involved, and the parent volunteers to bring this forward. I'm glad there's more than 200 participants, and it's a fantastic program. Appreciate your help.
Absolutely. They have actually a waiting list. It actually exceeded their expectations. And Dr. Spiewak and Mrs. Pfeiffer and other leaders at the high school and myself worked together on that, so thank you for that recognition.
Thank you. Now on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to add to the student board representatives' reports about the Methacton High School field hockey team. While they certainly did win the pack and were undefeated, they were actually 20-0, which is a tremendous season, with many of those competitions being shutouts. They are the number 2 seed in District 1 playoffs, and I hope you'll join me tomorrow afternoon, approximately 3:30, where we'll host Central Bucks South in the second round of playoffs. On another important award, we have Dina Nawami and Valentina Prince, who are also winners of the PAC Girls Tennis Double Championships. So we want to certainly recognize them, and we will do so at a future board meeting, present them M Awards for their outstanding achievements. In addition to athletics, we have an important announcement. You probably remember the young man named Jeremy Wang. Jeremy, again, was a semifinalist in the Siemens competition. Methacton was recently informed that senior Jeremy Wang was among 491 U.S. School students who reached the level of semifinalist in this year's prestigious Siemens competition, the nation's premier STEM research competition for high school students. Jeremy was selected from more than 1,800 students who submitted innovative individual team research projects. This is the second year in a row that Jeremy has reached semifinal status, so we're proud of his accomplishments as well. And last for my comments, I just want to make mention that there is an item on the agenda this evening related to the school calendar, and I just want to make a few comments about that so the board and the public are apprised prior to any comments on action items. So in a letter communicated to families on October 19th, I shared that an action by the Pennsylvania Department of Education will require a revision to the district's 2017-18 instructional calendar. This action result of the teachers' strike rescinded the district's ability to use Act 80 days to count towards the student attendance requirement under the school code. Given that the strike lasted 3 days and the 2018 school calendar included approximately 9 Act 80 days, 12 additional student attendance days at certain levels had to be included in the revised school calendar. I provided a revised calendar for public view and shared the same with the board. This calendar is on the agenda for approval this evening. Generally, the calendar impacts the following. All previous Act 80 days are now days of actual student attendance. In the original 2017-18 calendar, the Act 80 days do not require students to physically attend. In place of attendance, the Act 80 rules allow for teacher professional development, parent-teacher conferences, among other options to be conducted on those days, thus counting towards the required 180 days of student attendance. The calendar revisions not only require students to now attend, but as I communicated with the staff last week, it does not support our original professional development goals either. However, the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, along with the Office of Professional Development, will be looking at identifying alternative solutions that will help us accomplish as many of our professional development goals as possible in lieu of the Act 80 issue. In addition, it should be noted that we have projected that this calendar change will likely result in about a $250,000 additional impact to the 17-18 budget. This cost is primarily driven by transportation of students on the additional days, but also includes some additional personnel costs as well. I'm working with the business office to identify options to address these projected cost increases within the budget, and we'll share that with the Finance Committee at the November Finance Committee meeting and then with the board. In addition, the calendar change also impacts one of the spring holiday dates, so March 28th has now been designated as a student day. If there are school cancellations due to weather, snow for example, we will first pull from March 29th, then tack on at the end of the school year, typically as we would do in any other school year. November 20, 21, 22, and February 16 are proposed as early dismissal days for grades K through 8 in order to accommodate for parent-teacher conferences and meet our attendance requirements. There will be additional kindergarten communications to parents in order to accommodate all the parent-teacher conferences at that level. And that occurs, I plan to have that occur similarly to what we would do on a regular year. On this calendar, June 6, 7, and 8 are listed as days of attendance pending outcome of the arbitrator's decision and final agreement on best and final contract offers. The non-binding arbitration decision and a subsequent acceptance of the decision by both parties may have an impact on these 3 days. As of right now, they are scheduled as student attendance days until I hear otherwise. Graduation is to remain as close to the anticipated end of the school year, June 8th, as possible, barring any snow days. The school board will set the official date of graduation in March as they normally do. And lastly, I'm aware that these changes may have an impact on the families' schedules as well as our teachers and our students. Please know that the needs of our students, parents, teachers, and community were foremost in my mind when addressing the required calendar changes. While this is not at all an ideal solution, the fact remains that this process is necessary. The item is on your agenda for approval. That ends my report.
Thank you. Now on to public comment on board action items. Do we have any? Yeah.
Joe Bickelman from Audubon. I just have a few questions regarding the bills. On the wire transfer list, there's a credit card payment to TD Bank for $3,200, $3,217.92. I don't know what that's for. Does anybody come prepared with the detail on that? Okay, I would just ask one of my elected officials, preferably the chair of the Finance Committee, to tell the superintendent to break down the detail on this report so that everybody can understand what that payment's for month to month. So I would ask that you just tell the superintendent to type a few more lines to see what it's for, because in the prior months, the credit cards were purchased, 15 dozen golf balls at Dick's because there was a sale. There was also an emergency with an ice machine that was there was an ice machine working, but it wasn't enough ice, so we used the credit card to buy an ice machine instead of opening an account with the vendor and issuing him a check. So, you know, I just think that this needs to be broken down so you don't have to ask the question every month. Because does everybody know what it's for? Everybody on the board's going to vote for it. The other item I have is has to do with AEM Architects. I see they're being approved as the architect for 6.5% of the total cost of the starting projects. AEM was the firm that put together the $100 million report of capital needs for the district. That's all I have to say about that. Regarding the bond issues, I still think we need to go out to a competitive bid process for the bond issues. I brought a newspaper article again about the county. I'd just like to say that the county had a bond issue in September, about $13 million, and they said the bonds, this is from the newspaper, the Times Herald, the bonds were sold through a competitive online bidding process that drew strong interest among several underwriter firms, with 7 banks ultimately submitting bids, according to the county. Okay, and Janney Montgomery Scott got the winning bid. They also had a bond for about $60+ million back in May or June. They had 7 bidders bid on those bonds also, competitively bid, and of the 7 that were listed in the publication from the county, RBC Capital Markets was not one that was bidding on that $60+ million issue from the county. So would you rather have 7+ underwriters competitively bidding for your bonds, or do you want to sit across a desk from RBC Capital Management and negotiate an interest rate? People need, the investors need tax-free school district bonds that are in demand from a high credit rating district like ours. They're a wanted product for somebody's portfolio. So let the people bid on it, rather than sit across a desk and get the flexibility of whatever they said about flexibility, PFM. So I definitely think that you should go out for competitive bids, and I hope the minutes of the Finance Committee reflect that I spoke against negotiated sales, because a lot of the minutes in this district don't reflect the essence of the speaker, okay? If I'm speaking against negotiated sales, I'm speaking against negotiated sales. I'm not just talking about negotiated and competitive bids. So hopefully that's the case. And hopefully, you know, there is still time to go to a competitive bid process and save money so that the money that you save can get into the classroom to help the kids. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback on the minutes.
John, is that your hand up? I can't see it. Okay, come on.
Good evening. John Andrews, Lower Providence. Got a few items here this evening. On the list of bills, page 4, there's roof repairs for about $15,000, where the vendor is P. Glenn Schaub. I Googled roofing vendors in Reading, Pennsylvania. 22 of them showed up, but not P. Glenn Schaub. And I wonder why people think there aren't any local roofers. You know, every time the roofer comes from Reading to here, you're charged, presumably you're charged an hour for travel time coming and an hour for travel time returning. In other words, less money for the classrooms. On page 10 of the list of bills, Lakeside Educational Network, and the item is described as first of 10 months installments, summer school, for about $29,000. Does that mean that overall, over 10 months, it's going to be $293,000? The issue there is that the information may be misleading, and there's no reason for that. And item 9F on the agenda, Master Plan Resolution, Resolution 1708, that excludes the Audubon School. Currently, there's no spending planned for there, but why exclude it? There could be something coming up needing funding at that school, and it's just another word added to the documentation. Item 9G, the Keystone Realty. I believe that needs more study, and there's no urgency to vote on that this evening. I think that their contract says that they get, if they're successful, they get a payout of 25% of the additional revenue for each of 3 years. And they include that whenever the tax rates go up, that they benefit. To me, I view that as a free ride for them. I think the payout should, in a future contract, should be based on the first year's tax rate only. And I think directors should see a year-by-year report of their performance for the 5-year contract. It's possible that the first year they identified 15 properties, and by the last year they'd run out of properties, so they identified none. Now, with commercial properties being rather static here, perhaps you should find someone else or not to give a fresh look, or just figure that there aren't any properties that are misappraised at this time. With regard to Shannondale as one of their named properties, let's say they examine the Shannondale situation in 2013. Well, in 2015 or 2016, Shannondale has put brand new buildings on the tax rolls, and I don't think that they should be getting any profit from those, because presumably Shannondale, year in and year out, uses the same information for the assessments to be established.
Can you finish up, please?
I have a fair amount to go here yet. I'm going quickly, and my understanding of the Sunshine Law is that there is no time limit on the public speaking relative to items to vote upon.
The legal requirement is that a reasonable opportunity be provided, and the board has decided through policy adoption to create a time limit that it applies evenly across the board. And it's important that when such a policy is adopted, to stick with it and enforce it. There's certainly no legal challenges to a board adopting a reasonable time limit have been brought.
There have been times when I've asked the board to vote on finishing by statement relative to items to be voted upon. So I'm giving a challenge. But maybe you don't want to hear all what I have to say.
Thank you. Jim.
Jim Mollick, Worcester. I originally wasn't going to get up here, but, there's nothing in the school code that precludes you from answering a question. So when somebody comes up here and says, how much was the credit card bill for $3,000? You could just say, what was it? Tell them.
Dr. Mollick, is this a board action item that you're addressing? Could you let us know what board action item you're addressing?
The bills.
Okay.
The bills. I mean, if you can't figure out that, that's a problem. Because you're addressing me right now.
Jim,
I'll
continue,
address,
please?
I will.
Thank you.
So, obviously, I was addressing the bills when I addressed the $3,000 credit card. Can I have my time back for the interruption? Thank you. There's nothing in the school code that precludes you from answering a question. So when somebody like myself comes to the microphone and says, what was the credit card bill for $3,000? I don't think it's unreasonable to get an answer. as opposed to comments only. Mr. Bickelman asked the question. I think it was reasonable to provide him with an answer. I think it's reasonable to provide me with an answer as to what the credit card bill is. If you choose not to, that's your prerogative. But I think as a board, we're taxpayers. We're the ones footing the bill for the $3,000 credit card bill. I think we deserve to know what it is and why you're approving it. That's just my opinion. That's my opinion. And that's my statement.
Jim, I agree with everything you just said, and usually when we have a quick answer that we can provide, we do provide it. But if it's going to go into lengthy or we don't know, then we don't go into those. Okay?
I appreciate it, and I appreciate you extending me that courtesy.
Sure.
When it comes to the Sunshine Law, because there was a Sunshine Law challenge, I'm going to challenge under 710.1C, because that's my prerogative, because I think there was just a violation. How many action items are there tonight? Because it looks to me there's a good 50 of them if you do the subparts. So to give him 4 minutes on 50 items is not reasonable. So I think you goofed. So in my opinion, I think you guys goofed in not giving him more time. So I think you're violating the Sunshine Law. That's my opinion under 710.1C.
Your challenge is noted and should be reflected in the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you. So I think you made a mistake. I think you violated the Sunshine Law. I think you should have given him more time. That's just my opinion. With regards to the bonds, I wasn't going to say anything until I heard the explanation about why we're not doing a situation where there's competitive bidding. I agree with Mr. Bickelman. Makes perfect sense to me. Why would you go with one source when you can go with 7 different sources who are going to competitively bid your bond situation for you? To me, it makes sense. Competition would give you a situation where you'd probably get a better deal. Now, if I were you, and this is just my opinion, I would ask somebody who has extensive financial experience on the board, like Mr. Dorn, who managed or was a manager of a multi-billion-dollar company like GE, for his expertise and his opinion, and maybe he can give you some advice as to what you should do. That's just my opinion. So, I appreciate your tolerance of my opinions.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, thank you. Let's move along. May I have a motion to approve the board meeting minutes of the work session held on September 19th and the regular meeting on the 26th? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. Now on to the fiscal items. Mr. Bricker.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. Tonight I have for your approval the list of bills, the treasurer's report, budgetary transfers, the reimbursement resolution 17-06, resolution 1707 debt service savings, resolution 1708 master plan, Keystone Realty Advisors Agreement, engineering design services, architectural design services, and Alerta program.
Okay. All right. The first motion, I'll keep that one together unless anybody wants to break that up, and then we might want to break up the other ones. May I have a motion to approve the list of bills, treasurer's report, and the budgetary transfers as presented? Second. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Mr. Bricker, do you have the breakdown of the credit card bill?
Yes, I do.
Could you please provide it to us?
Yes,
There's a $4.38 credit from Office Depot for credit on sales tax. There was a $59 charge for a SMORE annual subscription, $106 Nest Aware annual subscription, a $1,250 payment due for the Methacton High School baseball for Southwest Airlines deposit, $194.90 for Unger tractor sales to complete gasket set. There was $195 for a Walmart at purchase order 18001148, $7.98 for the Chromebook application monthly fee to students, $9.98 Chromebook application monthly fee to students, $152 Hobart service for a thermometer, $60 for safetypostershop.com for 5 downloadable posters, $95.88 subscription to We Video Inc. video editing software, $150 Tosco's teacher induction luncheon, $899.97 Tractor Supply 3 42-inch barrel fans, 99 cents for Apple iTunes application monthly fee, and $40 for the Escape Room Professional Development 2. Total of the credit card charges was $3,217.92.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. And just for the edification of the public and the board, can you just go through what the process is when people use the card?
The only time we use the card would be in a situation where you cannot have a purchase order submitted. It's typically with online ordering and purchases of that nature. They have to submit the request through the business office. I have to approve it and verify that what they're buying is what is needed as well as reasonable, and then we would purchase it accordingly.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comment? Okay. All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. Does anybody want me to break up D, E, and F individually? Or should we just go for them?
Yes, I'd like to break out, he wants a feedback.
Tim's.
Show yourself. Sorry. That's better. I'd like to break out the master plan resolution, F, please.
You want these separate too? Okay, we'll just do all three separate. Okay, so may I have a motion to approve Resolution 1706 for the reimbursement of technology purchases? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes. Thanks. May I have a motion to approve Resolution 1707 for debt service savings? Second. Any discussion?
Yes, please. It seems to me that members of the public have asked us this before to put our financing requests out to bid and to look around at the best options. And it seems to be ignored every single time. And I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Bickelman, you asked to do this the last time we did this. Or was it twice before, or even several couple times. And have you done this at the Finance Committee meetings? Yes, okay. I am not a financier, banker, and/or money manager. I'm a florist. So I do my best to understand this as much as I can, and I think over the past 8 years I've done a pretty good job. But when you keep getting questioned by the public by the same times and we don't get an answer, it kind of makes me say, well, maybe we should look at that and see what's going on. The second part of this is, while I am in full agreement we need to do the work and need to pay for the improvements to the capital, to the facilities, I believe that also, I'm taking this time to announce this now, is that I believe we need to fully look at the Arrowhead building and start work as far as the property committee goes on deciding what direction we are going to go with that building. I do not see spending a lot of money on that building if there are other plans for it, okay? It doesn't make sense us to do that, and the discussion has to be handled, and it doesn't make sense to borrow money against something that we may not want to fix. Or Maybe we are going to fix it, or maybe renovate it, or do something different with it. So what I'm getting at is that while, this bond is very important that we do this, I think for the future ones that we must look at all possible ways of financing and getting the money. If we can save money by doing this, that's fine. And also, so we're kind of hitting two committees at once with this, where the Finance Committee needs to look at those options and report back to the board, and the Property Committee should look at the Arrowhead property, and let's look at that and start a plan of attack and find out what we're going to be doing with that building.
Herb, I was just going to let you finish your thought there, but really your comments are for F, right? The master plan, not the refinance one.
I was talking master plan.
Okay. But just to respond, in 2018, the plan is to look at Arrowhead and figure out what the plan is to do there, because it's not an easy solve. If we are confident we need the building, then it opens up the question of, if you put $15 million into it, you still have an old building, and should we just spend a little bit more money and tear it down and build a new one? Or do we really need it? So that's a discussion and decision for 2018.
The also thing is with the debt service savings, while this one appears to be a good one, there have been ones in the past that did not seem to be as good. So we need to make sure that we're looking at these very carefully as we go through them. Thank you.
Any more comment on E?
Can we just clarify what motion is on the table right now? So we're just discussing E right now?
Yeah,
Okay.
Herb's comments kind of went across both and mostly
I thought
focused
you
on F.
Open them up to all of them.
No, and you were halfway done before I realized you were talking mostly about F, so I just let it go. Okay, so E.
Yeah, just a couple of points of clarification. The competitive versus negotiated bids, that has come up multiple times in our Finance Committee meetings. And Tim, you can correct me anytime along here if I'm wrong, but we've basically been told that sometimes competitive bids can result in better a result for the bond refunding. Other times it does not. It's kind of a 50-50 depending on the timing of it. So it has been looked at, it has been addressed. The comment was about asking Mr. Dorn, his expertise. He is on the Finance Committee, so we have looked at this. This hasn't been just ignored, so I just wanted to follow up to Herb's comment. Thank you.
I'll just quick jump in here. Mr. Mock, thank you for the kind words, but I'm not a money manager. I managed a big budget, but that's it. I guess I would ask our friends from PFM, is it too late if we decided to competitively bid the underwriting?
It's very close to
Okay, but not.
If you get it done by the end of the year, it would be a fair amount of work.
My comment, and Michael's right, we have talked about it at the committee, and, competition does get driven through a competitive bidding process, and that's probably something that we need to dig a little deeper on as a board as it relates to this. I think Herb rightfully acknowledged that we've heard this a couple of times. We have inquired about it with PFM at the Finance Committee. I would say it probably doesn't hurt to go out one time and see how a competitive bid works in this scenario. The question is, do we have time to do it now? And we don't want to jeopardize our ability, but I would strongly suggest as we go into the Finance Committee the next time that we really look at the bond issues on a competitive basis, just to really check where we've been. I do have concerns if what we heard in public, I'm not sure if our person even bid the county bonds. Don't know. I mean, the fact that they weren't on we said they weren't on the list of, I think, Joe, you said they weren't, in the county publication they weren't. That doesn't necessarily mean they might not have bid on it. Don't know. So not having them on a list doesn't concern me, because they usually cherry pick those things across the board depending on their funds, right? So,
it's a good point by the public, and, I think we'll have some different discussions maybe in the future at the Finance Committee to drive a more competitive look, at least to try it one time.
Paul?
And to follow up with Scott's points, in fairness, that there is a deadline, but it's more or less an artificial deadline from the perspective of when we need the money. For the comments that have been made by previous public about specifically when we need it, and if we need the $8.5 million, I just want to be on the record for the perspective that the end of the year date is not necessarily a date that is methactins, in my opinion. The second point is there is a risk around and I know there's risk either direction, but there's risk around the rate also. That's probably more relevant to the impact on methactin when we're sitting at 1.95-ish, I guess. Yes, current one is 1.95 as of 10/23. So a movement up to 2.2 for a competitive bid will be much more cost prohibitive to methactin than probably the competitive bid process. So certainly if I knew which way the interest rates was going, I probably wouldn't be sitting here, to be honest. But the point is that's where the bigger aspect of the risk is in this particular point in time, in my opinion.
Any more comment?
And when PFM mentioned it's a great deal of work, who is it a great deal of work for?
I suppose we've done negotiated, or started on a negotiated sale and switched to competitive sale process. I suppose I've done that before, but I can't remember exactly when it was. But we'd have to get the official statement was put together. We'd have to put together bid specs, get it on the calendar, get it out to the prospective bidders, give them ample time, and we still have to have the 15 days between each of the sales, and still get to settlement on the second deal by the end of December, although that's if you want to get both of them done in this calendar year.
So the work is on PFM's.
Well, it'll be us and your legal team and the administration.
Okay, thank you. Any more comment? Sure, go ahead.
Just a question on that. The resolution itself doesn't say whether it's going to be competitively bid or negotiated. So if we decided to approve this resolution, we could still be doing that process, or how is it authorized that it is done competitively bid or negotiated? Is it through a resolution that we're doing here tonight?
John Cox from Roads and Signs here as your bond counsel. Yes, so the resolutions as drafted and advertised and authorized weeks ago for the proceed to move forward with drafting these documents contemplated that we would be undertaking a negotiated transaction with RBC Capital Markets. So the resolutions as drafted and advertised do contemplate that approach.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to follow up because like Mr. Roth, I'm not part of the Finance Committee in that. So I'm assuming the Finance Committee decided on this because of what Mr. Winters just spoke about and the risk of the rate with competitive versus, or did I misunderstand? Because the four of you, with three of you with a finance background, that's what real guidance.
Yeah, there was certainly a piece of it. I would say that was not the deciding factor. It was the sometimes negotiated can be better than competitive, sometimes it's not. There's the interest, the interest rate could move quickly on us. It's not just one factor that comes into this, it's an overall.
And if I could just add to that, we did have discussions about negotiated versus competitive bid several months ago. And as a result of our concerns on that subject, we did receive a report that analyzed interest rates and recommended that we go with the negotiated method. And we didn't have any issues with that, which is the reason that we continue to proceed in this direction.
Thank you, everybody. Any more? Jim?
How many other financial advisors have given us bids on what work they're doing? I mean, this is just PFM. I mean, you have OPM, you know, a lot of other financial advisors around that have different ways of looking at it, and also their rates as far as commission are different. So, you know, I think the board should be looking at what other people have ideas on how we should be managing the finances, not just always going to the same well year after year after year, and just because, you know, they might always negotiate an interest rate rather than a competitive bid, but another financial advisor might say, well, it's better having a competitive bid than negotiate the interest rate. So I think it's more than just whether PFM's doing all the work. Well, yeah, they're willing to do all the work as long as they get the commission. So I think this is something that the business manager, superintendent have to look at as going out and seeing what other financial advisors are out there and what their ideas and what their outlook is over bonds and how to manage them, just to get another look at our finances.
Thank you. Any other comment? All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 8-1 with Mr. Phillips being the one nay. All right. Moving on to Resolution 1708, the master plan. May I have a motion to approve Resolution 17-08 for master plan as presented? Second. Did I get a second from anybody? Yeah, okay. Any discussion? Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Roth was saying and just reiterate that the property committee has begun at least a cursory discussion about all of our buildings and all of our facilities, whether we currently have students in them or not, and Arrowhead being a part of that conversation. And we decided as a committee that we would pick up that discussion in earnest later on this year going into 2018 so that we can make a better informed and fiscally responsible decision about how we spend this facility money and how we address things in the master plan, so that we aren't putting money into a facility only to have it still not measure up, and to make sure that our buildings are being properly maintained.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, and I think I'll follow up on what Kim said. She's exactly right. We have had the discussion. We prioritize the first tranche of actions at the high school and a couple of other things, mainly focused on getting roofs ready, getting mechanical systems, et cetera. And we made it a point to discuss Arrowhead to make sure that the building was safe, secure, you know, proper temperature, et cetera. But it's a large commitment. I think Mr. Boardman touched on it, and it does involve significant evaluation about, you know, how you spend your money, and are you spending, you know, your money on an asset that even if you spend whatever $13-15 million in it is an obsolete asset. So, you know, the board will have to evaluate, you know, what the right way to spend the money is, you know, is the asset necessary, et cetera. But this first tranche of expenditures for the master plan will really go into the areas of most significant need for the district at this point in time.
I'd like to finish up my comment on that in saying that, you know, while Scott and Kim are correct, we had talked about what we would do in the first, you know, couple of years regarding Arrowhead, because when you look at the master plan, it doesn't have a whole lot listed there on certain things. You have the roof being pushed back to a certain time where we know the roof is one of the key things. So my emphasis was to stay that we need to look into the future of that building, or whatever we do, sooner than later, like before we borrow another $8 million on anything. That's what I'm getting at. Thanks.
Thanks, Herb. Any other comment? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 8-1 with Mr. Phillips being the one no vote. All right, moving on. Excuse me. May I have a motion to approve the amendment for an extension to the Keystone Realty Advisors Agreement as presented? Second? Any discussion? Go ahead, Ken.
I just wanted to clarify, so I'm looking at this agreement, and the way that I'm understanding it is that we don't make payment to Keystone Realty Advisors if they are not successful in finding, basically finding money for us. So if they don't do any work, at the end of the 5 years, they don't get anything from us. That's a correct understanding of it? Yes. I know it's an oversimplification, but I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. Okay, thank you.
That is correct.
That's the best way to put it.
I just have one question, and I was asked this question, and quite frankly, I couldn't answer it. And Kyle, maybe you know, or Dr. Zerbe or Tim. In the Keystone Agreement, you know, let's take Shannondale. With the new buildings coming on board, if there was an appeal in 2013, or if there was an action by Keystone back a number of years on Shannondale, when subsequent buildings come online, they're not automatically attached to the original appeal. They're handled as a separate item. I'm assuming that's correct, and you know, the initial work by Keystone, if it pertained to a specific set of assets at Shannondale, wouldn't include new assets. They couldn't attach to the new assets for fee.
There would have to be an appeal on the property each year that there's a discrepancy, and so it would require, as new properties come on, it would require us to take a new appeal.
So it's
for
not
them to be a
automatically
part. It's not
attached.
automatic.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't almost like a follow me.
Right, one of the things that Kyle's firm has done is they took all those annual appeals going way back and then consolidated that. So anything new would be outside of that bundle. It'd have to be considered.
Yeah, I just want to also sort of follow up and make the point that these are properties identified by Keystone that can be taken to the school district for us to choose to act upon them or not act upon them. They're not immediately act upon, and they do require some input from the attorney, and that was the one feedback I want to emphasize that came from that, is that the expectation from, or I would say the recommendation from Keystone is that our solicitor provides that services as part of our normal doing business, not a billable cost. So I want to highlight that that is an expectation in this process with our solicitors, Kyle. Thank you.
Any other comment? Okay, Jim.
As far as their property review, is that, I don't see here if it's commercial or residential or both. Did the district give them a basic breakdown, what we're looking for them to go after? And also, if they're to present us things, and what's the litmus test for what we go after for an appeal versus not going after?
The parameters aren't specific to the type of property, whether residential, commercial, industrial. It has no bearing on the guidance. The bearing has to do with the threshold for which a property might return the taxable revenue to the district. So if there's a swing of $10,000 or greater of taxable revenue swing, properties may be identified and subject to our review and approval to move forward with those particular properties.
So the threshold is a increase of $10,000 in revenue. Okay. What do you have any idea what the average that the district's paying on legal fees, doing appraisals and stuff like that annually for as appeals?
I do not have that information here this evening. However, we did provide a report to the board several months ago that outlines the position that we've been in, or that we are in, with relationship to the years of service through the solicitor and through Keystone Realty, and we are to the positive with that relationship. So the program has done what it was originally planned to do, which was to, at the minimum, offset those properties for which our appeals are brought by the taxpayer that could have substantial impact to the revenue of the district. And it's done that, and it's actually provided additional revenue for the district.
Yeah, the only reason why I asked that question is, you know, we're always chasing around, and the board is always making the decision whether who to go after or who not to go after. Is it enough money to go after? And instead of us wasting a lot of taxpayers' money on all the attorney's fees, all the appraisals, the board should be asking the county commissioners to do a countywide reassessment. I mean, they haven't done one since, I think it's 96. We've had a census. And if that was done, then we don't have to go through this process of hiring attorneys, hiring appraisers, and fighting individual companies or people to where, you know, you're picking the winners and losers on who's going to get taxed more or not. And I think it would level things, the playing field within the whole school district, and I mean also the county. But as we go through years of appeal process with Shannondale, for instance, I mean, if it was a countywide reassessment, that process would have been done a long time ago.
All right, thanks. Jim, anybody else? Okay, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion passes 7-2 with Ms. Hackett and Mr. Phillips, the two noes. All right, where are we at?
If I could just interrupt, Mr. President, the next on the agenda is item H and item I, which are engineering design services and architectural design services. We asked Dan Sakala from Fidavia to just update you on these two items, because if you recall at the work session, those items weren't, you know, entirely complete and have changed since we had last discussed them. So, Mr. Sakala?
Good evening. Good evening. Sorry. Just providing a little context to both H and I. You might recall at the last board meeting you had asked that although you're moving forward with the master plan for year one, you wanted to see the design contracts before they were actually executed. We had the authority to negotiate, but we would bring those contracts to you. So we have two of the first year work in items H and I. Both of them, one of them, H is regarding the mechanical system at the high school, and then the other is the auditorium renovations here, primarily in the ceiling. With regard to both of those, you may also recall that we went out with a competitive RFP process a number of months ago for both of those. With the engineering, we had picked a couple engineers that the district had used before, and then we added another one. Architecturally, we actually picked all the people that were the finalists in the master plan and we sent it back out to them to compete for the architectural services for Arcola. So where we are tonight is at the point where, and as also, as you may recall, we had some investigative work that needed to be completed as sort of the first phase of both of those contracts. So that work was done, those reports were submitted and reviewed, and now we're at the point we have to start designing so we can get out to bid. And am I giving too much detail? Okay. So in both cases, and we didn't have the final percentages last month because what happened was after we did the investigative work, we wound up in a coupling of the fruits of the investigative work plus also the reality of trying to fit all the work within the schedule of the 10-year master plan. We reduced some of the dollar values of the work that originally went out. So in both cases, the design professionals asked to have their percentage increased a little bit, so we needed the time to negotiate that back down. So, in summary, with regard to the Arcola Auditorium project, we're recommending AEM for a fee of 6.5%, which is currently based on a budget of $1 million. That's what's reflected in the master plan. Again, all the hard and soft costs are already built into the master plan. And then secondly, with regard to the mechanical system, because it's mechanicals and the architect is really a very minor component on that, it's an engineer-led process at the high school. So we are recommending consolidated at a fee of 5%, and that's based on a budget right now of $3.8 million in year one.
Thank you. Any questions for him?
I think last month or last week, we had on the agenda a number of $500,000, and we sort of went away from that and went to this very specific.
It was like a not-to-exceed number, I believe.
Right. And so is this a good deal for us?
I think it's an excellent deal.
Okay.
I think generally speaking, a lot of school districts, when they go out to bid, having done a lot of this, you're in the, again, it depends on the size of the project. The larger the project, the fee tends to come down. But I believe paying 6.5% is a fair market rate for the really for any school renovation project, and then getting the mechanicals at a current $3.8 million figure at 5% is. It's a good savings, yes.
Just make a couple of comments, and thanks, Dan. If you remember, we went through this process, and we ended up with Fidavia kind of as our rep in this process. And one of the reasons we did that was to give ourselves the flexibility to, instead of locking in with an architect or with an engineer for the term of our master plan, we gave ourselves the flexibility to bid the architectural and engineering services for a given year. And I think that's yielded some benefits with these numbers. The 5 and 6.5% are a very competitive number in the industry for this type of work. I can vouch for it because this is kind of the stuff that I did. And I think it's the process that we've laid forward going forward will allow us to continue to drive that competitiveness. The one caution I think we have to be careful of as an engineer or an architect learns a particular school or does a substantial amount of work in a particular school, there's kind of an embedded knowledge base that they'll gain from that school. And so there may be in the future years a reason to say, listen, this is an add-on or a modification to a mechanical system that was just done, and instead of having a new engineer learn all of what got done and the whys, because sometimes there's a little uniqueness in the design of such things, it may behoove us to pick the pony because of the knowledge, and that should gain us savings. So I think this time around it makes a lot of sense to have done it this way, and it was competitively bid through Fidavia. But in the future, I think you got to kind of make sure that we're not losing a knowledge base to gain a couple pennies and then,
the cost could eat us in change orders and whatnot. So, I would support this for this first time around. I just think you got to ask the right questions as you go forward.
And what we can do next year, when we get to the next tranche of projects, we can still put it out to competitive bid and then evaluate if there is a differential between who's been doing the work and the other prices we're receiving.
And then the last thing I'll say, I know that the intent is to further negotiate the documents, the legal terms of these documents. I am not a fan of AIA documents. I don't think I ever signed one in my life at GE, but it is the industry standard. And it is, for this type of work, I think it's probably okay, but we will need to address things like ownership of documents and licenses and whatnot, that we should own our documents. We paid for the work. We can indemnify as necessary with that ownership. But there's some details in these documents from a legal piece that I think we have to trust Dan, you, and Kyle, your firm, to make sure that we get these things correct. I think the dollars with the percentages are okay, but I think the legal terms need a little bit of work and massaging from a technical perspective.
Yeah, just make sure I understand. And when I'm looking at the AEM, I see $3.9 million estimated total all comprehensive cost associated with the costs. And then I see a timeline of 6 overall process can take up to 1 year, and construction 6 to 8 months. So the recommendation here, if I'm correct, is that the timing of this would mean that the Arcola auditorium would not be in ability to be used, more or less, if I read this correctly, from June through the end of 2018?
No, none of that is set in stone. And similarly, the mechanical work at the high school is not set in stone. There's a much larger mechanical project than one summer can allow, but we're in our next property committee meeting, we're going to be going through the nuts and bolts of that as to what we feel we can accomplish effectively in the summer, and perhaps branching before and after the summer, if it's doable in terms of the school, the school's operations. We're going to. That's an ongoing dialogue.
Okay, so thank you. I guess from my perspective, I said that word. From a perspective of really understanding where we're headed from in next year, so when it's evaluated, I would like to know if the recommendation is to do it all at once. It ends up being the recommendation that it's done as one project, what the plan is for auditorium usage in the first half of the school year.
We couldn't make the recommendation without that plan, hand in hand with that. So.
Yeah, but we haven't really discussed it as a board at all, that we are not going to have the use of this. At least maybe property has, but...
No, we did touch on it at the property committee, and we're very concerned about those exact things. And, we're going to have to decide what can be, how can be broken up to allow us to use the auditoriums, even the mechanical systems. You kind of work through the summer, and then you're going into a heating season versus cooling. So you can end up working on some other parts of it to get ready for the next cooling season. So there's a lot of hair on this one that needs some work.
In addition, we have a variable year-end school.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Scott answered my first one, as I see he has copies of these next to him with marks on them, so I just want to make sure that you had a chance to... I know this is your area of expertise, so I do have a question in regards to the Consolidated Engineers of Leesport. Do they have any connection themselves with AEM? Do they have any affiliation or anything?
No, the candid answer is they have been on projects together, but there's no financial, legal connection between the two of them.
Okay.
We've been on projects with them separately and them together.
Okay. And is there any, it just seems like we continually push further and further out, Leesport. Is there any concern?
Pardon me, I'm sorry?
In terms of being Leesport, PA, do we have any concern ever that we're pushing some of these jobs so far out for companies that aren't even local? Is there any, local aspect to this?
Some of the other competitors were local,
and then,
that did not get it.
Okay. And I guess in regards to, and this necessarily isn't towards you, but since we're going to use AEM again, they are the ones who came up with the master plan for us, the master schedule for us, who put everything in the original tranches. And then we went and we kind of did our own thing anyway, in terms of prioritizing what was going to be done in terms of, not doing Arrowhead, as Mr. Roth brought up before, and I continually say meeting in and meeting out. And then we decided to do work for the high school. I would just be curious to know if the plan is that, they give us all this architectural design services. Do we plan on actually using the design services?
Let me make sure I understand. You're talking about the services they gave us previously. They really didn't do any design services. They did evaluative services. But in the master plan, they didn't go into any design details. That's kind of a separate phase from everything else. So the design part is what this actually is. So it's taking the evaluative items and then packaging it into, various tranches so that we can go out to bid. For instance, with roofing, it probably won't be either of these. It'll be a roofing consultant.
Correct.
That'll be involved in something like that.
Yes.
So
That's probably next month.
This becomes that next sequential phase for actually doing the detail work, whether it's engineering work or design work.
Yeah, no, thank you, Scott. And I do get the difference between what they did for us before and the design services. My point was really just being that they've done work for us in the past, and we've ignored the recommendations. So I'm just saying that, do we really want to use a company again for a different type of service? I just want to make sure if we're going to use them, that we actually use what they're telling us to do. AEM specifically told us in the master plan in order to do things. Now, it was very detailed, and we went against that plan. So I'm just making the point that if they come back to us, that I hope we actually use the services that they provided to us.
All right, anybody else? Okay. All those in favor?
You don't have a motion yet.
Oh, we don't. Thank you. How about we start with a motion? Yeah. May I have a motion to approve the contracts with Consolidated Engineers and A&M Architects for work as part of year one of the master plan as presented? Second. Any more discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Motion passes. No. The motion passes 8-1 with Mr. Ryan, no. All right, now on to J, the LERTA program. May I have a motion to approve the LERTA program as presented? Second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Motion passes. Now on to personnel items. Dr. Sosnovic.
Thank you, Mr. President. For your consideration tonight, we have one resignation administrative. We have a resignation classified, one change of status, one uncompensated leave professional, two uncompensated leaves classified. We have the approval of the supplemental contracts in the amount of $9,637.96. We have the winter coaches for the amount of $112,889.96. We then have an additional 5 supplemental contracts for you to consider. We have the list of volunteers and the 3 updates to the job descriptions as listed.
Thank you. May I have a motion? Does anybody want to break any of these out first? Okay. Yeah, Paul. P. Okay, so we'll do a motion first for A through O. May I have a motion to approve personnel items A through O as presented? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now, may I have a motion to approve item P, the job descriptions? Second. Discussion. Paul, why don't you start?
Yeah, I'm just going to make, understand that the transportation manager may be the end solution. I am not comfortable at this point, even though we got lots of information last week from the general public. I still want to vet this out a little bit, understanding of what the root cause in the transportation problem is. So for item P1, I will not be supporting.
And I share some of those same concerns, as I have spoken to previously. I'm okay with moving forward on the job description, but I think that when we get to the actual hiring of a candidate, it's going to be critical that we have identified what these root cause issues are prior to bringing someone on, because we need to make sure that whoever it is that we find to fill this role is actually going to provide something that will solve our problems. If we don't find the right candidate, I don't think that we should just put the best that we get in there. I think we need to make sure that they are the right person and the best fit for us. So I'm okay with approving the job description, but I just want to make it clear that the job description and the hiring of the transportation manager are very different things as far as I'm concerned.
Any other comment?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what I said last week in terms of the actual job description. I still have a concern with item number 14, where we've redlined prepares and maintains all transportation schedules and routing, and we now have it as just an overseeing and a verifying. I believe members of the public had also stated the same. If we hire a transportation manager, I would hope that they have advanced skills in routing, therefore that they should be the ones who are doing the routing. If this is just a pure oversight position, then I wouldn't support. Thank you.
Go ahead, Brenda.
I also had some comments concerning the level of a job description that this is. Some of the conversation that we've had and that we've heard from the public is that we don't seem to have really identified exactly how we need to go about solving the problem that we have. And I don't think that this job description is of the level that would bring someone who has the sufficient level of experience and capability to actually manage this entire effort. So I have a problem with that job description.
Any other comments? Okay.
Chris, you can probably just pull P1 out if you want, and put 2 and 3 together.
There is a motion currently for all items under P. That's what's currently on the table.
I'd say take a vote on that, and if it doesn't pass, we can revote it.
Okay.
Yeah, might as well just do it that way. Okay. Well, let's go ahead with the vote.
I'd like to make a motion to split 2 and 3 out, please.
So there's a motion to take item P1. So there's a motion to amend the motion, which is currently P, items 1, 2, and 3, to remove item 1. Is that correct?
Amend the motion. Amend the motion to just be P1.
So amend the motion to remove items 2 and 3. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
There's a second?
Okay.
Any discussion? So a vote to approve amending the motion.
Everybody approve amending the motion? For? Any opposed? I'm not sure what your hand was, Jim.
It doesn't much matter.
Okay.
I'll end up voting on it one way or another.
Okay, so the approval to amend the motion to remove 2 and 3 has been approved. Now we'll take a motion.
You have a motion. The motion has been amended, so the current item before the board is P1.
Any more discussion? Okay.
Dave, if we don't approve any of the three, does it affect anything that you're currently working on? Does it hamper anything?
No, it does not. In fact, we're going to be moving forward with interviewing the candidates that we received from the 20-plus applications. I will solicit, I'll take the information that I received from your comments here this evening. If you choose not to approve any of these job descriptions, particularly the job description for the transportation manager, we'll review those recommendations, and if they are appropriate, we'll bring them back to the board for future consideration.
So then, to clarify, because that was not my understanding, we can move forward with the advertising. We've already advertised the position, so we can continue to move forward with advertising, collecting applications, interviewing candidates. How far can we go in the process before we need to have a job description in place?
I would recommend that the job description needs to be approved prior to the hiring of the individual. That could actually, if there was a work session prior to a voting meeting where we have a candidate that meets the criteria that we're seeking and that we want to bring forward, so long as on the agenda the evening the job description is approved first and then the person's approved second, I think that would be the closest we would want to be with the decisions of those actions. But I think it's important that, we had quite a good discussion at the work session regarding this matter. Certainly there's some questions that board members have and some comments that they've made this evening. We'll consider those and address them appropriately.
Any more comment? Okay, all those in favor?
P1.
Of P1, for P1. Approve it. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That count right? Motion passes by a vote of 5 to 4. The no votes would, the no votes, Mr. Winters, Ms. Aubrey Larson-East, Mr. Ryan, and Ms. Hackett. Okay, motion passes. Now on to the other two. May I have a motion to approve P2 and P3, the job descriptions for the assistant principal and the system administrator attached? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Thank you. Now to curriculum and programs.
There's one item on the agenda this evening for your approval. That is to approve the science tech book for grade 6. It's from Discovery Education at a unit cost of $48 per student for 368 students. It would be a 6-year license and a cost of $17,664.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the science tech book as presented? Second. Any discussion? Brenda, why don't you go first?
Okay. So this is an online textbook, or is there paper as well?
It is online. It's through Discovery Education, which we already have.
Just one question. I'm always curious. Any feedback?
No, we did not have any reviews or feedback.
Thank you.
And also, curiosity question, how do we end up with the number of students? Is that based on the 6-year projection of the 6th graders coming through? The 368 students, how do we determine how many licenses to buy?
That is for what we currently have.
The current 6th grade class?
Yes.
So from a projection perspective, do we use the M&M study to determine over the next 6 years how many, or do we just buy supplemental copies down the road? I'm just curious on, what the right quantity.
We did not project out,
Yeah.
so.
It's this year's class of 368 is the driver. Okay.
So then, I guess then, we should be concerned that this probably will go up. As having a current sixth grader, I can say that their class is a little bit on the small side. So I just would be concerned that the cost could go up a little bit. The other question I have is how students are accessing this. Obviously, when they're in school, accessing something online is not an issue, but is there, how are they accessing it from home, or are they not?
They will be able to access it in school or at home. They'll have a login, and they will be able.
I guess what I'm wondering is
the hardware. So
the hardware component. The sixth graders are not part of the Chromebook initiative, so then how are they going to be able? How are we going to guarantee that there's access from home?
So there are other supplemental resources that the teachers still use. This provides access to some different nonfiction text for students to go through and to learn about certain systems for science based on some of the curriculum that has shifted a little bit between grades 5 and 6, and there would not necessarily be a need for assigning anything at home that students would need to access there. There would be alternatives.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Dr. Sosnovic has the enrollment report, and he said 377 is the highest that grade 6 would get to based on those projections for the next 7 years.
Looking at the current, thank you. Looking at the current first through fifth, so 377 is the highest cohort. It always ebbs and flows, so there might be some additional licenses required. We'll address that in the summer.
It'll just be a few $100s based on those numbers. Or do you want to give the exact number, Brenda?
So it is now the end of October. So will this be for this sixth grade class this year? And so they will have it for the balance of the year? So in 6 years, will they only have it from September to October, since we would be getting the license then? Or will they not have it at all that year?
No, they will have it. They will have the license, the time frame adjusted accordingly so that they have it for a full 6 years.
Okay, so I was just thinking about the class that is coming in 6 years. So we would have to pay for an additional period of time at that time to finish out that year. Otherwise, we're sort of wasting 2 months, if you will. So will this be different than what the students have already been learning in sixth grade at this point? Because they've been in class now for 2 months.
They do have resources that they're using, but this is the resources that they have been drawing from are more dated, and these are resources that Discovery Education updates on a very regular basis to be as current as possible with whatever the topic might be in science, that students would be able, as I said, to access informational articles or, certain types of assignments that they could work on through, a collaborative means or whatever that might be.
Just to follow up on Brenda's point, does it make sense at this time, since you're procuring a 6-year game, to just procure the entire school year that right now will only have a partial? The way I think you answered it, I'm not sure. So if this 6 years takes us through October of whatever the number is for that class, should we just buy the whole school year for that year now, or ask them to throw it in, or use it as a negotiation of some sort from a procurement perspective? Does that make sense? Do you understand?
They are going to be making an adjustment to our time frame, because we are actually in our planning and working with the science coordinators, looking to next year look ahead to bringing this into a couple other grade levels, and so they want to keep us on the same track, and so we will get that additional time in what we are spending.
All right, any other questions? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Now on to policy, Dr. Zerbe.
There are 10 policies for your review for first reading under 12A. For your approval this evening, there are 9 policies that are on second reading. Policy 121, field trips, 249, bullying, 616, payment of bills, 706.1, disposal of property, 805, emergency preparedness, 805.1, relationships with law enforcement, 807, opening exercises, 808.1, free and reduced meals, and 811, bonding.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the second reading policies as presented? Second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Nope, okay. Moving on to the other things, Dr.
Under 13A, there's a gifts and donation for fruit from an anonymous donor for Eagleville Elementary School. The value of the gift is $65. Under item B, there are 3 trips that are listed here. Please recognize that there is an adjustment from the work session. And that adjustment is related to item 1, B1. It does now include the cost for substitutes for the half-day that's now scheduled if in fact you approve item D, the revised instructional calendar below. Otherwise, the trips would not be, the trip under B1 would not include substitutes if you do not approve the calendar. Other than that, the items in B are all the same as per our discussion at the work session. Item C, under negotiations, I did review the recommendation that Ms. Hackett brought forward from the work session, checked with our solicitor in charge of negotiations, and he did concur that the language shall be changed, and that's reflected in the motion under negotiations for 13C. And then the last item, as I explained under my superintendent's report, the revised instructional calendar as attached.
All right, thank you. I think I'm going to go out of order since the trips are dependent on the calendar. I'll do A and then I'll go to the calendar to approve that and then come back to B. So may I have a motion to accept the gifts as presented? Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, gifts pass.
Calendar,
D. May I have a motion to approve the revised instructional calendar as presented? Second, any discussion?
I have a, sorry. Dr. Sisnovic used this. It kind of relates to the calendar and the trips. And this is more of a question I've received from parents. I understand completely why we have to do the calendar the way we have to do it. But because it also brings up this trip, the question is, many people have trips planned and they'll fill out their trip form. So are we going to approve those trips as excused even if they've hit the 10-day limit? And I'm asking for people, that have asked me that. And so, like for example, this ski trip, the kids will have, and I'm not against the ski trip, they will miss now, well, depending on their grade, 2 days of school. Let me figure out the camera. So I just would like to know how that's going to be handled, if possible.
Just to make a clarification on the ski trip, there's a couple points, and I just want to clarify. It's my understanding that they're leaving on the evening of the 15th, okay? So they will not miss the 15th. And they are missing the half day on the 16th, and they'll be returning prior to our normal return on the 20th of February. But to your first point, the ski trip is not an educational trip, and it's listed not as an educational trip. Generally, we wouldn't allow these types of trips to go in exchange for a school day. However, there's a number of circumstances that I think the board ought to allow me to consider when either approving or not approving trips. This is one that happened to be caught in the middle of what I will assume, a challenging situation. I don't know. I certainly think that we'll work with the building administration in both of the buildings that are apprised of this to make sure that our students are prepared to well enough in advance to address that. Other than that, I don't see that will be any of the calendar changes will affect those trips. Now, you may be referring to other trips that are yet not in front of you as approved or in front of my office to be approved, and I'll certainly have to take them on an as they come basis.
No, and thank you for answering the trip. I guess what I meant, since we're on the calendar, and I have no issue, I understand why we're changing the calendar, people have asked me, for example, they have trips planned already, not school-related.
Talking about personal trips?
Personal trips.
This is, I'll use an example of the spring holiday. The spring holiday, generally speaking, assumes that the 28th and 29th are days that are, we'll call them days off, as the calendars originally approved. However, they're also designated as days that we would typically use first if there were snow delays, or not delays, or cancellations. And generally speaking, I would treat all of the days that for which we are scheduling school to be days of student attendance. And while a trip may be planned, I can't assume those things otherwise.
Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? We have one opposed, Mr. Roth.
Is that on the calendar?
On the calendar. That we were on the calendar. Okay, back to B, the trips. May I have a motion to approve the trips as presented? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? It's hard to see hands here. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. It's hard to see here in this configuration. Okay, now on to C, the negotiation. So we revised that. So now it reads, to approve the stipulations between Methacton School District Board of School Directors, and the Methacton Education Association relating to the non-binding final best offer arbitration proceeding in accordance with the PS Stat ANN. I won't read the rest of that. As listed. Do I have a motion may I have a motion to approve that? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed? I can't see. You're opposed, Jim? Okay. We have one opposed, Mr. Phillips. All right, now on to dates for the board members. November 1st, we have the Policy Committee. The 6th, we have the Education Committee. November 8th, we have the Finance Committee. November 13th, Property Committee. November 21st, the Board Work Session. And the 28th, we have the last board meeting, right, of this full board, because then on the 4th, we have the reorganization meeting. All right. Any old business? Any new business? Yeah.
Not a voting matter, just a report back to the board. Brenda and I both attended the PSBA PASA conference last week from Wednesday through Friday. You had the opportunity of approximately 7 different educational and informational sessions that you could attend. They had different tracks based off of whether you wanted to go an advocacy route, legislative, the whole different gamut of selections that you could choose from. I personally attended the board policy one, all students proficient readers by grade 3. There was also a fiscal policy, as well as engaging all board members in the budget process and a couple other things. Also, it was a great experience, and I'm not sure, if Brenda, if you were there or not, or whatever, it was the student showcase. They had approximately 10 different groups from across the state of Pennsylvania come to bring their musical talent, whether it be an a cappella group, a jazz orchestra, things of that nature. And to say that these kids were phenomenal, I mean, you would have paid money to see these kids perform. So it was great to see. The last part of the 3 days was a half-day voting meeting, which Brenda and I both attended. Items to note would be, in the last board meeting, we approved to vote for David Hutchinson for president of PSBA and Wolfgang for vice president. Both of them did succeed, so the president will be David Hutchinson, the vice president will be Wolfgang. And there was also some votes on the amendments to bylaws. There was 3 different types of changes that they wanted to make. Only one of them actually did pass. If any other board members would like some of the more detailed information on this, definitely see Brenda and I. But I highly recommend next year. This is a great 3-day program to see the different challenges that the school districts face across the state of Pennsylvania as compared to ours, and how they deal with it, and just the different ways of looking at things. It's definitely worth going. I think the dates for next year are October 17th to the 19th. So just want to give an update.
Great, thank you.
And if I could add to that, as Michael mentioned, we had the delegate assembly at the end of the conference, and as he also pointed out, some of the motions failed, and I think it was, at least from my experience, it was almost like being in the state legislature, where all the rural districts are able to vote down something that would probably be logical for the entire state.
Just wanted to say thank you both for attending. One of these days, I will use up one of those valuable personal days.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, on to courtesy of the floor. Anybody? Joe, you had your hand up first, so.
Joe Bickelman from Audubon. Just the simple stuff first. I think you should have a table for the student reps and Dr. Katona. They should have space up here. And you should have their certificates ready for anybody that's due to get a certificate. And I think if you're going to take PFM and move them up in every meeting, I think you should just put them on the agenda where you want them, because somebody might be coming late because they know PFM is speaking late, and they might miss PFM if they get moved up. So if you're going to move PFM up every meeting, just put them in the agenda that way. Do we have any early admissions to kindergarten here, or are we strict to the date? Do we have anybody that gets admitted early? Is the policy just to take 5-year-olds after the date? Do we have any early admissions for kindergarten? Superintendent? You don't know if we have any early admissions to kindergarten? Regarding the credit card payment, we spent $150 to Walmart. I don't know what it's for. There's another store that we made a payment to that I don't know what it's for. I just know the vendor, Costco. I don't know the vendor. And the money to Southwest Airlines, what's that for? Summer baseball or something? Or fall baseball? Or I don't know what that's for. Usually a lot of these emergencies that come up with this is lack of planning on someone's part, and they had to have it yesterday. like the teacher luncheon, things like that, you know. But I don't know what we bought from Walmart. It could be anything. I'd like the comment that Mike Ryan made about AEM saying we should get a roof for Arrowhead, and then we don't get a roof, we put it off for 2 years. That tells you something, I think. And regarding the teacher's contract, I read in the newspaper that the salaries are 2%, 5 point something percent, and 4 point something percent. I think, you know what the CPI is for this area? I don't think it approaches those two increases in the second and third year. You know the index already for this year, and you know the index for next year. It's 2.4%, and somewhere around that area for next year. You have budget constraints, and if you approve these large increases of 5 point, I think it was 1 or 4 point something in the second and third years, I think you're going to have to close a school or outsource another hard-working, dedicated group of individuals. Next in line would probably be the custodians or aides or somebody like that. So these are big numbers, and these numbers don't exist anymore like that anywhere. I think that prior concessions in contracts gone by isn't a reason to make up for lost salary. Those were prior concessions. And I think you need to get out of that whole Montgomery County thing, that salary leapfrog thing. You know, we're in the bottom third, and we want to get up in the middle third, and now district down the road wants to be in the top third. But there's too many variables that go into that, like staff, age, experience, things like that, the construct of the salary matrix, and other things that go into it. So I think you need to back off of those second and third years, because, you know, that's some outlandish percentage increases. And I hope, you know, the enrollment's at 4,007, call it 4,800 or whatever, but hopefully, you know, that estimate that we had of 6,500 kids to build Skyview, hopefully somebody yelps that estimator and gives them a bad review, because you wouldn't want another district using that same company to give you projections like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Christine Capisi. I'm from Lower Providence. I've been in this district for 20 years dealing with stuff. I'm so sick of it. When I heard you say, after all this nonsense, how many years have we been talking about closing schools? And I hear you say that you're actually questioning whether you need Arrowhead. Have you looked at the geographic size of this district? Have you looked at the number of students? Have you looked at the new construction in the Arrowhead area? I cannot leave my house without seeing new houses. You need that building. I don't know what the solution is. You need a fourth, bare minimum, elementary school in this district. You cannot use 3 elementary schools to house all the students. You just said you had 38 kindergartners that you did not anticipate. I don't know what the solution is, but if you are talking about doing that, closing another elementary school, I fear for the reputation of this district, because the outsiders are looking at this district and they're going elsewhere. This district is not what it was when I came in, and I'm afraid of what the value of my house is going to be when I try to sell it.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name. Capisi, thank you.
Do you need me to spell it?
Sure.
C-A-P-E-C-E.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Jim?
I just wanted to clarify that we're not in the process of discussing closing Arrowhead. What we are talking about is the use of the facilities. And I know that it sounds like it's a conversation about closing a school, but they are very different things. And it's more of the, what's the best way to treat that facility so that we can keep our schools functioning the way they need to function.
The words I heard spoken or if we even need that building. You need some building.
Okay, we can have a conversation later to clarify, but I just wanted to make it clear that it's not about closing the school, it's about the future of the building, and they're very different things, and we can
Okay.
talk about it.
Okay.
Jim Malik, Worcester. Mr. Ryan, maybe you can help me out here, because I'm a little bit confused. What I handed you there is something that I want to know if you recognize. Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
And the reason I gave it to you is I don't want to make any assumptions, especially with something like that. So you're the Michael K. Ryan on that document, right?
Hey, Jim,
But
you're supposed to
I know
direct your comments to me.
but I have
chair
to.
of the-
In order for me to continue, I got to make sure, because this is kind of serious. So I just need to know if you're the Michael K. Ryan on the document, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason that I said what I said is I didn't want to give the false impression that the document had somebody else's name on it. The document that I handed Mr. Ryan came from Magisterial District Judge 38-120. That's Kelly Rebar's district. And I was hoping that maybe Mr. Ryan would have made a statement to explain the document to us, rather than me having to explain the document to the board. Now, I don't know whether you guys know what I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you that the document that I gave him is a docket sheet, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus Michael K. Ryan, and the document says that there's a description of charges on there of public drunkenness and similar misconduct. Offense date 9/30/2017. Now, I believe everybody's innocent until proven guilty. Mr. Ryan pled that he was innocent. I frankly believe he's innocent. That's not my question. I'm not here to embarrass Mr. Ryan or anything else. I was an expert witness for 20 years. And I believe him when he says he's innocent, because he pled he's innocent. I'm here to find out how he put himself, or how he got into the situation, to get an explanation, for him to clear his name here in front of everybody. I mean, how do you get in a situation where you're charged for that situation? So all I want's an explanation. I don't care about the rest of it. I frankly believe him. I think he's innocent. So can you provide some kind of an explanation as to how you get into that situation?
All right. I just want to check to make sure it's appropriate for him to
Yeah, sure.
comment on that.
No
But
problem.
Just to let you know, that's about 4 minutes. That's the end of your public comment.
Sure, no
portion of
problem.
it. Okay.
I just want to double check with the board. Is the board okay with me having an explanation right now?
You do whatever you feel to do, Mr. Ryan.
Generally, when things are directed to individual board members, it's my recommendation that they do what they're comfortable with. Okay.
I have no problem addressing, and you have every right to bring up this.
No problem.
And I think it's probably a good thing that maybe you did bring it up, because people have been, spreading various rumors throughout the district. I was actually told that I was convicted of a DUI. So I will just say that, number one, to set the record straight, no, I was not arrested for nor convicted for a DUI. I was not charged for a DUI. As you mentioned, the charge is for a charge of public drunkenness and similar misconduct, which is a summary non-traffic offense, for those that don't know. Like I said, full transparency, right? What I did that night, I won't get into the details of that because that is not the place. This is not the time or the place to get into the details. It's an ongoing personal matter for myself. As you mentioned, I did plead not guilty. I am awaiting a court date before the judge. I do think it's important, though, that because the word DUI was put out there, I actually chose not to drive home that evening. I want to stress that because I think it's important for anyone who might have any questions about what I did or my character, is I actually chose not to drive home that evening. And I do say that I am not guilty and I have entered that plea. So does that suffice?
Again,
and I'm sorry.
Again, I'm not doing this for any embarrassment purposes, you know.
Well, it's okay. It's okay.
No,
honestly,
I'm serious.
Honestly, I'm okay.
I believe, I said it before, I said it when I started off. I believe, you said you're not guilty, and I believe, Frank, I believe you when you say you're not guilty.
Jim.
My only question was, and I'm just explaining myself, is how you got into the situation, that's all.
I just have to say that, as Chris said, I gave you my explanation, I gave you my statement. and
So
the time is up.
you're not prepared to explain it, is what you said?
No, I'm fully prepared. I gave you my response. That is my response.
This isn't the time for a dialogue, so.
Yeah, you just said you're not prepared to explain it.
I had to let.
Please let the record state that I did not say that. I did not say that I was not prepared to respond. Those words did not come out of my mouth. So for the board minutes, thank you.
Thanks. Any other public comment? Okay, I think we'll end. Motion to adjourn the meeting, second. All those in favor? Thank you for coming out tonight, folks.